Kevin Orosz, welcome to Being. Thanks for being here, brother.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me, Patrick. Honored to be here.
Yeah, man, this is super exciting. So we actually met in person last year at Envision Festival briefly. There's a lot of people there, a lot of energy moving, so didn't have a chance to really drop in. So I'm really excited to have this time with you today to really go deep on some topics and see what you've been up to and see what you've been creating in the world, man.
Yeah, I was so honored to be at Envision. Like, it felt like the last party on earth, right?
Right?
Like, right before everything closed down. We were just in the jungle with like all these legends having a celebration.
Unbelievable. It was so good. So I think a good place to start for people that maybe not be familiar with your work, how would you describe like your mission in the world? What is your purpose in the world?
Yeah, my mission, as I understand it, and it's evolving, of course, as is everything, is really as a speaker, mentor, and creator, an artist with the spoken word and with my facilitation, workshop, retreats, coaching, mentorship, to help revive the archetypal masculine on the planet, and also to help repair the imbalances between masculine and feminine, between, the earth and humanity, and really pioneering new systems for governance, finance, art, and culture. Like we really are in a cultural upgrade. So my role in that and my mission is to be a storyteller and mythologist and philosopher who's a lover of wisdom, who can communicate those visions to humanity in such a way that they can be actualized.
Yes. Oh my God. I resonate so deeply with that. Like a cultural renaissance, a cultural enlightenment is what we're working towards. Yeah. And it's beautiful, that work. I was reading your bio earlier and it said, I love this phrase. I just want to read it back, is you can find Kevin playing dangerously at the intersection of Eastern wisdom, modern psychology, philosophy, mysticism, and neuroscience. He helps men and women develop practices that connect them deeper with their purpose and creativity. I love that line. Why would you say it's important for people to connect deeply with their purpose and creativity now more than ever?
Well, I mean, Osho said it, who's near and dear to my heart. I did a lot of training in like that lineage of bioenergetics and meditation. The most dangerous rebellion against the status quo is creativity, which is kind of alluded to in that bio. That's an older bio. I missed that one. Yeah, I mean, the most dangerous thing to the status quo in civilization that's like machine-like and dead and just for profit and based on more, is a human being who's connected to their purpose and fully alive and fully aware of who they are and is living for and leaning into creating a more beautiful earth and becoming prosperous and more powerful along the way, gaining more influence, gaining more, clarity around what is to be done, not just continuing these long chains of momentum and karma that we've created on the planet.
Totally. Yeah. And I think COVID has really illuminated how deeply entrenched we were in old patterns generationally. And I think it's served as a great, no matter how much suffering and carnage it's caused, it's been a catalyst in many ways, in my opinion, to, awaken people to really dive deeper into what is important to them, how we move forward individually and as a species. So, and creativity absolutely is a huge part of that. Actually, I've been re-entering my creative phase. Like I'm a musician, so I've been, creative my whole life, but sort of moved away from it because I was in the corporate sphere as like I was writing jingles for advertising, right? So I moved away from it, and just that space away from it made me realize how powerful and what a gift it is to have creativity as an outlet, as a medium through which to transmute my essence and my purpose. But what would you say to some people who might be listening that say, I don't feel creative, I'm not an artist, I don't play an instrument? Like, what are ways that they could be creative and move into the world through that space?
Yeah, creativity is much broader than just music and art as it's sold to us and commodified.
Right.
Creativity can express literally in any human activity. So there's a creative way to garden, to make your bed, to do the dishes. There's a creative way to speak. There's a creative way to move. And so it's less about, the medium, and it's more about the intentionality and your will. So creativity to me is a perfect expression of human will or spirit. So you have to make it your own. And a lot of people will just ape other people, or monkey see, monkey do, and that's fine. Imitation is a part of the process. There's nothing wrong with it. But eventually, you're going to have to manifest your uniqueness. So you have to find what it is that you actually love and you uniquely have, and then manifest it in the world. And that could look like, how you do your hair. It could look like writing a song. It could look like starting a business. It could look like how you relate with someone emotionally, sexually, spiritually. I mean, there's a lot of room for playing with that.
Yes. And play, I think, is one of the most important factors that has been sort of demonized within our society. If you're either in the competitive, strategic, capitalist world, or if you're playing, you're sort of being hedonistic or being childish. And I think that's a fundamental thing, that mindset we have to shift. What would you say are some common inhibiting factors of somebody who's trying to find their soul's purpose or endeavoring to find it? What are the things that hold people back from finding it?
Yeah, I'd say the three biggest ones, and I was on a call with a brother speaking about this last night, a client. The first one is just scarcity. So a lot of us were raised with scarcity on multiple levels. There's not enough food. There's not enough love. I need to make a strategy to get love or money. There's not enough to go around. So I need to hoard. And hoarding energy will not let you be creative or find your soul purpose or live in the Dharma, because it's about giving and it's about opening to life, not closing down. So scarcity is a deep one, and it runs super deep in our family lineage. It runs deep in our civilization codex. I mean, right there from the beginning in Genesis and the Bible and Christian civilization, it's scarcity, right?
Right.
Don't do this. Here are the rules. Stay here. Starvation. Being in the desert. It's all scarcity. It's really wild when you go down that rabbit hole. And so we all get to unearth that in ourselves and transmute it. The other one is imposter syndrome. So a lot of people feel like, well, I couldn't do that. And yet they give all this energy to celebrities and influencers and all these people, politicians who are just like them, but they just have positioning, status, power because they showed up and were consistent. Say what you will about politics, celebrities, and whoever, many of whom are, I would judge to be, at best case scenario, very negative, and worst case scenario, like just completely toxic. But some of them are doing good work, I think. And the only difference between me and that person is they just showed up consistently for years and honed the craft, whatever it is. And so imposter syndrome is that part of us that when we start to do the thing, whatever that is, whatever is meaningful to us, our dharma, our ikigai, what's important, the gift we have to give, what we're skilled at, what the world needs, imposter syndrome comes online. Oh, well, I can't do this. Or all these voices in the head, our parents, whatever. I say the third limiter is really, it's discipline. So a lot of the American culture and capitalistic culture is all about the American dream, like get rich quick, like it'll happen overnight, Wolf of Wall Street, this energy. And while that does happen, there are black swan events. I mean, right now, cryptocurrency is an example. We're in a black swan event bull market. That's amazing. And most success, especially if it's creative or meaningful, is a long succession of small actions and discipline and consistency.
Totally.
So that's where people get lost, is they're like, all right, I'm going to become a musician. And they work on something for like 10 days, get discouraged and stop. And they're like, well, why didn't it work? And it's like, well, you can't stop. You can't stop.
Yes. Beautiful. And you brought up imposter syndrome, and that's something that I've definitely experienced. I think most people have, but over my lifetime. And if I can be completely vulnerable, being around people as tuned in and powerful as you, like when I met you and a lot of the other people in the camp at Humans I Trust at Envision, there, you have such a grounded, powerful presence to you, and I was new to this sort of entrepreneurial space. And just feeling your presence, and I had the privilege of listening to you speak with Luke Cohen at one of the presentations, and just listening to both of you guys speak, I was just like, holy shit, these guys are so tuned in, so knowledgeable, just imparting this beautiful wisdom, absent of ego. I was definitely feeling imposter syndrome at that moment. So just and it's something that I think we all deal with from time to time. So just witnessing it, and this has been my process, and witnessing, allowing it to be there, and then sort of investigating with curiosity on where it comes from is a great way to move past it. And that's definitely what I've done. So thank you for being a good mirror for me, brother.
Yeah, I received those words, and I appreciate you. And you'll be relieved to hear I have imposter syndrome often.
There you go.
Like it doesn't go away; it just changes scale.
Exactly, and I think it's a function of growth and evolution.
Exactly.
The more you move past your comfort zone, you move into the unknown, and you feel uncomfortable, and that comes with imposter syndrome. So, to me, it's an indicator that you're moving in the right direction. You're evolving, you're growing, and having the courage to go into those zones. So, again, if anybody's listening who does feel imposter syndrome with whatever you're doing, just realize it's part of the natural evolution of growth, and something that you can work with, and not something to halt you in your tracks, which it does for many people.
100%.
Yeah. So you mentioned masculinity, and I know this is what you were talking about actually with Luke at Envision, is the archetypes of masculine energy. I would love to break that down, if you wouldn't mind, sort of unpack it for people who might not be familiar with what those are and what that means.
Yeah, I mean, this has been near and dear to my heart, and it's been how I structure a lot of my online courses and mentorship. And the seminal book that most I would recommend to start with is King, Warrior, Magician, Lover.
Okay.
Douglas Gillette, Robert Moore are the authors. It's an incredible book that will give you the starter pack for this. A lot of people think that like they invented them. They didn't. This is old stuff. The archetypes are basically psychic dominance, or that's how Jung described them. Or energy patterns in DNA. It's beyond humanity. Now, humans manifest them in a particular way. You can see all the gods and goddesses of pantheistic religion as archetypes, right? Psychic, energetic dominance, right? But in the masculine being and in the feminine being, there's four major poles. And a lot of this comes from Carl Jung. Some of it comes from Joseph Campbell, and they were studying, Aboriginal and Indigenous people and their mythologies all over the planet. So again, right. This isn't something that a couple guys in Europe, made up, which that always comes up. It's so interesting. It's just people don't understand history, which is part of the culturation. Totally. But there's basically four poles, and this maps onto the four elements, four directions. There's an energy pattern in our being of the characteristics that manifest in certain situations and in certain life eras. So there's these epochs in our lives as men,
right?
And these archetypes are the king, the warrior, the magician, and the lover. And so you can think about them as part of a whole. So it's not like you're one or the other. It's that you're right. All of them. It's just they manifest at different times. So for many men, the warrior and sometimes the lover will come online first. And you can obviously see this with like sports culture, dating culture, corporate culture, where the warrior is all about action, discipline, like setting boundaries, being very direct and moving forward, right? Which is a very powerful energy. Some men make the lover come online first, which a lover is all about enjoying life, relationship, enjoying food, sex, music, art, like, being expressive and being very connected to life. It's like that poetic, artistic, loving energy in the masculine heart.
Right.
The magician is a lot to do with, the scientist, the thinker, the engineer, the mystic who's going into those altered states of consciousness and the trance and becoming highly creative, accessing healing knowledge. Magicians also become good elders because later magicians are the ones that, initiate the king. And the king obviously is the sovereign, right? So this is the leader, the command, and the masculine. Usually the last one to come online when a man is well into his 40s or 50s. And, the kingdom can be a family, a company, a neighborhood, a village. And it's all about sovereignty, empowered speech, and leadership. Now, the Arthurian myth is a perfect example, which, is from thousands of years ago, right. The British Isles. It perfectly embodies the four archetypes. We have King Arthur, obviously. We have Merlin, his advisor and the magician. We have Lancelot, the ultimate warrior. And we have Guinevere, the ultimate lover, right? And so those archetypes are present in men and women.
Right.
And I've specialized and really studied how they manifest in men or in the masculine. But basically, why should you care? Why does this matter? Well, these archetypes, these energies, these are emotional, physical, spiritual, mental energies. they're there whether you think they are or not.
Mm.
So studying them is basically like understanding the map and learning how to navigate the territory.
Right.
And it creates so much ease and leverage in business, in mind and body training, and in your relationships and sexuality. And that's been my experience and my experience with clients. Some people, would argue that these are relics of the past and we can redefine masculinity however we want. There's this postmodernist idea that's really prevalent in the mainstream culture. And I think at best, that's very ignorant, and it's kind of like leaving out some of the wisdom. And at worst, it's like actually designed to dismantle and destroy some of these very archaic and potent energies. Not to say we need to go back to wearing loincloths and hunting bison, but we do need to bring these energies forward into the modern expression of masculinity.
Right. So just to help me understand, because I'm sort of not as familiar with this, these archetypes as many people aren't, are they all present in everybody to certain degrees? Can one exist simultaneously with the other? And does one sort of develop as the dominant archetype in certain people?
100%. I mean, all of the above. So They all exist. They all manifest differently. Some people, it's like a tool belt.
Right.
Some people, if they're not aware of it, and like their warrior, for example, is the hammer. They take the hammer to every task.
Right.
And so if there's a nail there, the hammer's great.
Yeah.
But if your wife is having an emotional breakdown and needs your support, the hammer may not be the best tool in that moment.
Right. So the idea is to sort of develop them equally and have a balance where you can integrate whichever one is useful in any situation.
That's the ideal, yes.
Right. Fascinating. Yeah, no, and I think it's beautiful. Just the balance between them, just recognizing where they show up in my own life. And sovereignty, as you mentioned, is definitely the one that's come online last for me, being well into my 40s, as you mentioned. But wow, it's so powerful when I feel that sense of sovereignty. All the other ones make sense within relation to it. So amazing. So I just want to go a little bit deeper into the masculine and how it's showing up in our world today, because for me, a lot of the problems that we're seeing in the world writ large are based in sort of egoic, toxic masculinity, where it's competitive, rivalrous games, profit at all costs, externalizing harm, to the environment, to others, to, advance an agenda or whatever it is going to suit my needs or the needs of my tribe. And so coming back to a sense of what positive, embodied, empowered masculinity looks like, to be archetypes to sort of raise the consciousness of the planet, to sort of transmute or combat the toxic masculinity. I think that's where we need to be focused. Would you agree with that?
100%. And it's a recontextualization, because we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. We want to keep the parts of the masculine, that worked in the rivalrous games,
right?
Direction, strategy, tactics, discipline,
right?
The beautiful masculine mind and what it's done for us with science and technology. It's built the world in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Certainly the feminine heart has helped, and they're synergistic. Now, the harm and the abuse of men versus men, men versus women, men versus children, men versus the environment. Right. I mean, this is all coming from trauma. It's hurt people. So you got to understand that the whole toxic masculinity thing that spawned from Me Too has been weaponized.
Right.
And it's not about shaming or guilt tripping men and castrating them energetically or sometimes physically. It's about reawakening the core principles that are going to build a healthy world, which is men in collaboration, positive sum games, building and profiting, but in a way that is holistically informed with earth and the environment and with the community at large.
Yes. Beautiful. So what are some of the ways that if somebody's listening and they're just discovering this for the first time, that they could explore their masculinity, they could explore some of these archetypes?
I mean, the first step is, if you don't have a group of men that you trust, that you meet with regularly, it's a great place to start, and it doesn't have to be fancy. You don't have to fly across the world to one of these men's retreats or men's groups. Although I would recommend it if you feel called. Just find a small group of men in your village and your community that you trust, and just meet. People are like, well, I don't know how to run a men's circle, or what's a men's circle? Very simple. set a time, set a date, gather together, do some kind of breath or embodiment practice, do a check-in, have a deep, vulnerable conversation, do a check-out, create consistency, watch what happens. It's that simple.
It is.
That's a huge step. Your girlfriend, your wife is not your therapist.
Yeah.
Your female friends and colleagues, they're not your therapist. They're not your, they are your support group, but I'm speaking specifically to how do we, men, there's certain things that men have to do with men. It's not about, and this is attacked too by the cancel culture. And, the mainstream culture is so far from, in my opinion, a grounded awareness of what creates healthy human beings.
Yeah.
That totally. You can almost just do the exact opposite thing of what you're reading on the news because they're so far from the mark.
Yeah, I totally agree. What just came up for me there, then you're talking about men's circles, is there's this idea of being vulnerable as a man, I think, is an inhibitor. It's a barrier because we've been programmed to view vulnerability as a weakness, to show emotion as a weakness. And so as a strategic advantage, we've been taught to cut off from our emotions. The man who's cut off from his emotions is less vulnerable. And so it's kind of counterintuitive if you haven't done any deep work to walk into a room and expose yourself to other men, even if you do trust them. That's why, most of my life I gathered in groups, we'd watch sports and just like rah, rah, rah and drink beers and shit. That was our way of men being with men, but it was kind of proliferating the toxic, not the toxic, but the unembodied masculine, right? And so so when you talk about it's simple, yes, the parameters of it's simple, but walking into a room, if you're not used to being vulnerable in any situation, let alone with other men, it can be very challenging. And I witnessed that myself. That was my experience when I first started going to men's groups. But having said that, fuck, is it powerful? And to be seen and to be able to express yourself vulnerably and to be heard by other men and to have them reflect back to you and then to listen to them share about their, there's so much power and community and building that positive masculinity in those containers, right?
100%. And, you have to create context and safety and consistency
exactly
to get to that point. So that's why, the first step is to start.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
And having a male mentor or elder helps a lot too.
Right.
Having an older man or a more experienced man in your field who you can trust and then lean into is going to accelerate this process also.
And this is where, we've strayed, like for hundreds of thousands of years, we were tribal, at the root. We existed in bands of, 150 or less. So there was always that sort of tribe. The men would go out and hunt and you'd have the tribal elders and you'd have that sense of community built in. Now, in the modern societies, we're out of our evolutionary element. This is not how we used to live, so we don't have that village community of, of a place where you can afford to be vulnerable and have the rituals of becoming a man and what that means, and how you can connect with nature, how you relate to the feminine. All those things are lost in modern culture. So, and, creating those within the culture by creating small tribes of men that you trust is a way back to rediscovering that power. So anybody's listening who hasn't gone to a men's group, highly recommend it. I was facilitating one for a while. I think I might have to start it again. This is inspiring me. So thank you, Kevin.
Great idea.
Another thing that you work with quite a bit is flow state. So I want to talk to you about that. And if you could just describe what, if somebody listening doesn't know, what is flow state? How do you get into it? And what triggers you in and out of it?
Yeah, flow state is essentially the zone, right? When I'm in the zone, or like, there's always words for it, often used in sports language, but this is for anyone, the coder, the marketer, the speaker, even on a date, you can get into the zone, the flow state. And the flow state is basically where you're at peak efficiency and proficiency. So you're skillfully doing whatever you're doing, but the least effort. It's like the Tao, like you're not using effort. Your sense of self is out of the way. So a lot of people experience transpersonal connection with the universe, with nature, with themselves in a flow state.
Right.
And there's like a well of creativity and performance that is, you're pushing all the parameters. And so this can be physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. This can be in a trance state or an altered state. And it's incredibly important to understand how you personally get into a flow state, right? And that's where this journey started for me, was geeking out and getting into high performance and nootropics and nutrition and training and plant medicine and martial arts, yoga, breath work, all these activities that are state modulators and create altered states or windows of trance and non-ordinary states of consciousness, and then entering a flow state. So, which is going to make you more productive, more creative, more sociable, more confident, more healthy physically also. So that's really what was behind my first online course, Flow State Mastery, which is like my 6 kind of steps or modules to, first off, discovering your flow triggers through experimentation, and then building a routine in your day where you reliably can get into a flow triggered state every day.
Right. So what are some of the parameters or the indicators that people could look for to know that they're in a flow state?
Well, you won't have a sense of self. So time will fly, right? Time dilation is when like time and like your sense of like your thoughts and being super in your thoughts will disappear. You'll find yourself deeply engaged in what you're doing. So immersion, you'll be very present. And you'll be enjoying it. So there's a sense of joy or ecstasis where you go beyond yourself and feel deep joy, meaningful joy. You'll also just be better at what you're doing. So you're going to be able to do what you're doing faster, more creatively, in less time, with more panache, with more creativity. You'll also find usually that you'll have insights or intuitive leaps, quantum leaps. So you may have been stuck on a problem or in a loop of whatever, and you'll break it. You'll pop into a new awareness, a new understanding, new perspective. Those are all pretty solid markers of flow state. There's many more, but it's different for everyone, of course.
Yeah, right. And it seems to me that there's like a transcendence of identity, a transcendence of ego, where you're no longer identified with, whatever you're attached to as your identity in the world. It's sort of all that sort of dissipates, and you just go into this state of beingness, the state of knowingness. And it's, it's such a beautiful space to be in. And then your mind comes back online, you get triggered out, right? That ego frontal lobe. So it's, there's a certain sense of allowing energy to flow, allowing your intuition to flow, and that's, again, for me, at least, something that I had to train myself to trust, because I grew up so in my mind, so intellectualized, and I've thought everything had to come from here. All the solutions had to come from my mind. That trusting my heart space, trusting my intuition, trusting a flow state took time to train, but once you sort of train it, and it's not to say that, the mind and the ego, for that matter, are incredibly useful tools, but used in unison, in harmony with your intuition, with your heart, is where you get a coherence that is way more powerful than either one by themselves. Right? Would you resonate with that?
100%. And the mind is a portal into flow states. So that's where I started as well. And you can get into a flow state through the mind. However, it's not going to be because of the mind. So it's kind of this paradox where the mind can organize and create these routines and triggers, these flow triggers that are more likely to put you in that state. Right. But the ultimate act of it is a surrender, and it's beyond the mind, right? A lot of my flow states personally are in the body. So dancing, rhythmic drumming, bioenergetics, breath work. These are all really powerful ways for me to enter it, because it helps me as a very mentally dominant man to come into the body and surrender.
Yes.
But there's a lot of ways to do it. I mean, in my course, I map like the top 6, which are meditation, breath work. And then there's like a suite I call self-programming, which is, visualization, affirmation, and writing.
Cool.
And then tantra. So this can be sexuality, self-pleasure, entering trance through drumming, ritual, dancing, and then reading and writing as a combination. And then obviously fasting and movement of any kind. So some kind of physical movement like training, martial arts, yoga, etc. So you can find, your minimum effective dose, right, of what you need unique to you to get into these states. And, I would argue that most people are doing this all the time and don't even know it. It's just making it conscious. All the people you look up to in business and art and athletics and romance. They're all in flow states. That's like a hallmark of high performers.
Totally. I totally agree. Yeah. Like Einstein, for example, said he had his most brilliant ideas when he wasn't thinking about it. You bang your head against the chalkboard all day and you can't figure it out. As soon as you go out and you play music or you're in nature, bam, there comes the solution, right? Because you're moving out of that ego mind. And again, coming back to that, I think the ego, humanity's crawled into the shell of the ego, and it's cut us off from a connection with source, connection with your heart, connection with intuition that, is again responsible for a lot of the problems we see in the world. But again, trusting that heart space and that intuition, and then moving into that space. One of the questions I love to ask people, and especially creative people like yourself, is when you're in that state, when you're in that flow state, and say, the example of music, because I'm a musician, a song comes to you, or an inspiration comes to you, or Einstein's idea comes to you. Where is that coming from? Is that an internal thing, or are you tapping into source energy or a collective consciousness? What is that?
Yeah, I mean, I should start by saying I don't know. No, and I don't think anyone knows.
No,
anyone
exactly.
who says they know, I don't believe them. But I have tons of hypotheses.
Okay, great.
I have tons of hypotheses, and I'll go from most grounded to most out there.
Okay, excellent.
The most grounded is that, the personal unconscious, or the personal nervous system, which the nervous system is distributed. It's not just in your head.
Right.
There's actually tons of ganglions and neurons in your heart, your gut, and distributed throughout your body. So your whole body is thinking. And so sometimes those things are just coming from reorganizations, discoveries, neural pathways that you can't access consciously, but they're all happening unconsciously.
Beautiful.
And sometimes they're accessed.
Yeah.
The next layer is that, and there's a lot of actual evidence for this, and even the CIA and the Pentagon are releasing evidence for this in 2021 and 2020, which is crazy, which is
awesome.
Paranormal phenomena, action at a distance, telepathy, etc., remote viewing. I think that as human beings, we are psychic, but it's not in the way we think, like Hollywood. It's just, our genes and the genome of Earth and all beings are literally connected. And then, you don't have to go that far into some of the science that's come out around quantum mechanics. I mean, some of this stuff's old, like Bell's theorem. Right. We know action at a distance, and in the quantum realm, things are connected. Like all protons in the universe are connected.
Isn't that crazy?
Through a microfilament network of black holes. It's like mycelium in the base substrate of matter. Ugh, so it's crazy. It's not hard to be like, yeah, of course I can feel what you're feeling, think what you're thinking across the world. I can access what people were thinking, because time doesn't exist in the quantum realm like it does here.
Right.
So I can have an insight that Beethoven had, or my future self, so this is where it starts to become really,
I love it. Wild. Keep going. Yeah.
For our 3D mind, because what the brain is, I mean, this is a mind-boggling stat that's true. And I've heard this first from Nassim Haramein at Red Lightning at Burning Man 3 years ago. And then I also heard it from, what is his name? Dr. Bruce. He worked with NASA. He's really good friends with Tim Leary, Terence McKenna, also at Burning Man. Basically, there's 100 billion neurons in the brain. There's 100 billion stars in a galaxy. There's more available connections. I forget the mathematical formula, but if you map the available connections, so in 100 billion neurons in your brain, how many different connection node networks they can create. Right. So it's like a factor, I think it's not exponential. It might be quadratic or whatever. You can look all this stuff up. I'm not making this up. That number is greater than the total number of atoms in the universe, the known universe, right?
Right.
So right there, that tells you, and this is a dimensional level. Now we're going to get a little more into the out there. The brain is a fourth dimensional organ. It has the ability to, it's a fourth dimensional organ.
What does that mean?
So we're in 3D reality, right? Well, just logically, if the brain has more potential pathways than the number of atoms in the 3D universe, then it's obviously a different dimensional organ.
So it's kind of like a conduit,
Exactly. So the fourth dimension is the dimension of time, and it's where the third dimension folds into the timelines. And, this might be called the Akasha. If you go into the Vedic scriptures, the Akasha, or Indra's jeweled web, which is, the cosmic brain that we all are embedded in. And so the mind, when we have those insights, where are they coming from? Well, they can come from anywhere, past, the present, the future, from any being, from any, whatever. Like, I don't think we're alone. I think it's pretty silly to think we're the only grain of sand on this galactic ocean. So
Agreed.
There's a lot of information in the universe. There's a lot, and you can access it.
Yeah. So that begs the question, how do we optimize, or how do we most develop our brains or our physical bodies to be receptors to, higher dimensions or different frequencies?
I think it comes back to the very basic stuff. Eating clean, moving your body, connecting to earth, like literally connecting to earth, bare feet on the earth, swimming in fresh water, the ocean. There's various ways you can enhance it with like detox protocols, superfoods, fasting, various yogic or meditation practices. There's a lot of pathways to do it, but it's as essential as just intending to do it. If you want to connect to your soul or to the deep well of love that is reality at the substrate level, it's all love. Now, all you have to do is intend and create space to do that. And this is why, Dr. Joe Dispenza, for example, is blowing up right now. He has a system where how he did it. Yeah. And it's as simple as creating that ritual, right? And stepping into a relationship with life is what it is.
I love that. Relationship with life. Beautiful. So that's kind of leads into my next question, is that the world obviously is moving at an alarming rate. It's changing so fast right now. And we've seen in the last year what effects that can cause globally, because we are now a global society. It's no longer, one nation. We're all global, whether we like it or not. And with exponential technology and, catastrophic weapons, nuclear weapons, we can't operate the way we've been operating before. So, moving into this next phase of humanity without killing ourselves in the process is really the biggest challenge, or killing the planet, or the myriad of ways this human experiment could end. So the question I've sort of been asking is, what are the skills, like we've been talking about the base level, taking care of yourself, meditation, developing self-awareness, eating healthy. But beyond that, what are the skills that we need to be developing now as individuals and communities in order to meet the challenges that we're facing and moving into the future?
Yeah, I mean, we're in a birthing process, and birthing is an awesome undertaking. That's very messy.
Also messy and painful, as you say.
Yeah, which I don't know anything about that, obviously, but I'm smart enough to know I don't know anything. And so ask your mom, or ask a woman who's given birth what birthing's like. And the planet's doing that. I believe, the planet's alive. I think Gaia is real, and she knows what she's doing. Okay. Now, our job, some people, I hear this argument every once in a while. It's like, you can't just do your self-work and like drink green juice and do yoga. Like, you need to go out there and change the world, blah, blah, blah. It's like, yes, and this is where quantum logic comes in. Quantum logic is both and instead of either or. Right. And so that's part of the process. That's step one, is move into a new paradigm of thinking. Yes. And Einstein said, who's president of this conversation, you can't solve any problem at the level of consciousness it was created. Totally. And so that's the rallying cry. Another rallying cry is from Buckminster Fuller, which is, the secret to change is not to tear down the old system. It's to focus all of your energy on creating the new system, which will outmode the old naturally. Totally. So systems thinking and resurrecting village, like you mentioned, these small bands, Dunbar's number, finding the others, connecting with them deeply, getting organized, and then becoming sovereign. And this is the big leap, and I think real sovereignty is, it's a full rabbit hole. It's one I've been researching, and I know a lot of people have been researching during this sacred pause of Corona. We're talking deep stuff like citizenship, passports, international business, finance, health and wellness, emotional and psychological sovereignty. I mean, this is a whole nother level of humanity's evolution. And some of the pathways to research, if you're listening to this, is permaculture design, cryptocurrency, research blockchain technology, research non-fungible tokens, research flag theory and ways to avoid some of the traps of the old financial system and tax system. And obviously a lot of this is happening already and has been happening, but I think it's going to accelerate. So when you say like, what are the tools or what do we need to do? It's like, yes, the meditation and the clean eating and the healthy living and like excavating your own shit and unlimiting yourself. Like everyone has to do that.
Yeah.
Like that's all you can do for the earth in some sense. Right.
Yeah.
Like Ram Dass, like, all I can do for you is work on myself. All you can do for me is work on yourself. And that's true at a core level. And, don't take my word for it. Experiment. Don't work on yourself and then go try to change someone else or start a, nonprofit. It's gonna tear itself apart.
Yeah.
Now, at a certain point, as soon as you feel ready, I would say, find the others.
Yeah.
So form a community, create coherence, create a decentralized mycelial network of heart and mind coherence with other human beings that are on the same mission as you. And life will self-organize that. I like the mythology of the Avengers in the Marvel universe. The Avengers are a bunch of big egos, superheroes of all different kinds. But when a common threat comes to Earth, when like this big shit going down, they team up, and there's a lot of drama and there's a lot of reconfigurations and relationships that fall and are created. But that's the Aquarian energy, right? Of this Aquarian new epoch that we're entering. There's a big clock that has been mapped by the ancestors. All these prophecies weren't just arbitrary. And we're in that time. So team up, get on land, create new systems. Don't waste your time trying to like convince generals and politicians and Wall Street brokers to suddenly go to yoga classes and change their ways. Put all your energy on creating the new earth.
Beautiful. Yeah, no, I totally agree. And one of the questions that comes up for me is, many years ago, I went down, every conspiratorial rabbit hole just because I was seeking. I wanted to understand what was really going on in the world. I realized I was looking outward, and that's necessary. And then I realized I had to go inward. And so I moved to Costa Rica and turned off the news and, didn't watch it for years and years and years doing the internal work. And that was the case up until basically coronavirus came around. I was like, okay, I need to start paying attention to what's really going on here. And so over the last year, I've found myself giving more attention to, trying to understand the problem space, because we are dealing with malevolent energies, like very powerful psychopaths at the helms of power structures, right? And so for me as a parent and a steward of the earth, I feel a sense of responsibility to not only do the inner work, so it's the both and, but also to recognize what my purpose is and to express myself and organize in the world in a way that is, the best for me and the whole simultaneously. And so exactly the things you're talking about. But I guess my question is, how much, the way I justify it is by, I need to understand the problem space fully in order to come up with solutions, that will obsolete it. Right. So we're talking about creating systems that will obsolete the old. So, but how much of, my giving my attention to the problem space, paying attention to the news, and I'm not just talking about the mainstream, like I look at multiple perspectives, but I want to understand what's going on in order to, make powerful, informed decisions. But how much of my energy am I giving to it to help manifest that sort of malevolent timeline? But, and the other side of that, I suppose, would be, find my tribe, go live on a commune in the middle of the jungle of Costa Rica and not listen to anything. Like that doesn't seem right either, because there has to be some interaction. Do you know what I'm talking about? Does this make sense?
100%. I mean, this is what I've spent the last 16 months deeply thinking about also. And some of the language you're using is reminding me of Daniel Schmachtenberger and the Consilience Project.
I'm a huge fan of Daniel Schmachtenberger.
Yeah, he's amazing. And what they're doing with the Consilience Project, I don't know where they're at with this, but it's creating like a meta news sense-making network doing exactly what you're talking about. Because the tricky thing about the news right now, and on all fronts, including social media, is it's all weaponized. It's all weaponized. It's openly AI echo chamber funneled information warfare, and it's asymmetrical.
Yeah.
So it's very tricky to understand how to move through it. And my stance has been consume only enough to understand themes and trends, and then return as quickly as I can to direct experience. How are my actual neighbors and fellow humans in my sector of reality operating, behaving, etc.
Yeah.
And then also to trust people that I trust that are doing due diligence and deep sense making that is good and is balanced, and listen to what they're saying as a point of signal and tune out the rest of the noise.
Yes.
Now, you're 100% right. Like, we're not, and anyone who's listening, you know, this is a really important thing to understand. It's not pleasant to understand, but, you know, it's not that just humans with good hearts and good intentions have just fucked up and we're in perpetual war. And, you know, there's all this weird financial and economic warfare. It's like, man, did they just fuck up and they're good people? It's like, well, no, it's by design.
Yeah, totally.
There are malevolent groups on this planet that, well, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. They don't give a fuck about you. They don't even give a fuck about humanity.
No.
And that's not even like a stretch, because you can just see by their actions, like the demonstration of their action. So anyway, knowing that and what we're up against, now, can we wage a kinetic war against them and overthrow them? No. I mean, at this point, there's nuclear weapons, drone-guided missiles, there's electronic and all kinds of wacky warfare we probably won't even hear about until decades from now. So that's not the way. We can't just go into communes and tune everything out and eat mangoes.
Right.
They tried that in the 60s. That doesn't work. So there's some kind of blended earth that we're living on already. Talking about timelines, there's already at least 2 Earths present on this Earth right now. There's one where sovereign groups of men and women who are interested in perfecting their bodies and minds as best possible, living in relationship with Earth and the wisdom of her and each other, and supporting each other to create prosperity and abundance and the new paradigm, which is, you know, stewards of a garden world instead of dominator extractors. And then there's the other guys, and that are, you know, there's many more. There's much gray area, but, you know, there's people that are just like, let's go to Mars. Let's strip mine the Earth. and it's insanity, right? It's insanity. It has no place in life. And that's why I do believe, you know, it's going to be messy and there's going to be a lot of stress involved, but those energies are actually counter to natural law and the evolution of this planet and consciousness itself. So they will be obsoleted automatically. And they already are. We're already seeing a lot of these power structures get collapsed in certain areas. And the good news is, you know, with the propaganda and the information war, what you got to realize is if things were really as bad as they say it was, if they really had complete control and, you know, everything was going as planned and, you know, these fascist systems were working, the propaganda wouldn't be necessary.
Exactly.
So you can be sure that it's not decided yet.
Yeah.
Because they're investing billions into convincing people that it's like that.
Yeah.
So that's good news.
It is good news. And I totally agree. And just coming back to, we were talking about finding your people and developing tribes. The way I like to look at it is that we need this bottom-up cultural revolution, this cultural renaissance. And it's going to start with nodal points. It starts at the individual level first. Do your own shit, do your personal work, take responsibility, and then show up in community, do men's groups, tribes of small people living together, living off the land, permaculture. And then those create nodal points that then connect to a decentralized network of collective intelligence, right? So Humans I Trust, as an example, a group we're both part of, that's a decentralized nodal point where, you know, there's authenticity, there's trust, there's, you know, we're all moving towards the same mission. And I think those little pockets are popping up all over the world. You're just not hearing about it on the mainstream news, right? And so in my, the reason I get out of bed every morning and the hope that fills my heart is that we have reached a tipping point, or we're very close to it, of conscious, aware, embodied, healed people that are getting together in tribes, creating these nodal points, and that's how we change the world from the bottom up of a collective intelligence. And that's exciting to me, and that's why I do what I do in the world. So, does that resonate for you?
100%. The revolution will not be televised.
There you go. And it actually it maps to blockchain quite nicely. You're talking about crypto earlier. Blockchain is at the root, the technology of decentralized networks, right? Although I don't know if you've gone down these rabbit holes, but there's a couple of people that I follow online that are talking about the blockchain because anything can be used for malevolence, right? And blockchain is a perfect example of that, as a tool of enslavement, as a tool of surveillance, and you're already seeing that in the social credit system in China. But I don't think, it's a reason to abandon that technology. And frankly, I don't think we could if we wanted to anymore anyway. But just to be recognizing, again, of the problem space that could arise within blockchain as a malevolent tool, and to make sure we are good stewards of it for the best possible use for humanity is the danger, right? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, this is something one of my gurus, Terence McKenna, talked about a lot. The situation we're in, the momentum that's built up in civilization and technology is such that there's no way to avoid the danger.
Right.
He called it a forward escape. So it's like the forward escape. It's like you got to charge,
right?
Trust, get your crew, build your starship, and just go right at the thing and just move through, trusting that life's going to organize so you can slip through some of these danger points. I mean, the same thing could be said about the internet. The internet was developed by the Department of Defense. Right. To become a military communication network. Right. And then marketers and capitalists were like, wait a minute, we could sell people shit on this. Yeah. And then look what it's become. It's become the nervous system of the planet. It's enabling this conversation and so much more. And, the surveillance tech is already well advanced, and it's not even hidden. It's pretty immense. I once saw this comedian at it was the Zeitgeist Film Festivals, Peter Joseph's the Zeitgeist films in LA many years ago, which that was when I was like doing my conspiracy rabbit holes, which those films actually do have great information, and then all the other presentation might turn some people off. But yeah, he basically was talking about everybody's worried about Big Brother, all the surveillance tech. Well, this smartphone, the iPhone, you got Little Brother in your pocket. Yes, you're being surveyed, but it's two-way. Right. All those videos of the cop killings and like revolutions in Hong Kong, it's Little Brother. So you this is the thing. This is Pandora's box. This is the Promethean flame that's been unleashed. The forces that would seek to control us can't, and they know it. So they're racing against the clock to create more systems of control. And yet every technological breakthrough, blockchain being a perfect example, you can't put it back in the box. And so our job as conscious creators, and this is what I always tell people when they get worried about crypto or blockchain, it's like, yes, what China's doing is concerning, and knowing that we have time, there's plenty of time. Lower your level of anxiety, because then you'll become creative and in that flow state, and we can start to map the territory together quickly. So we set up sovereign systems that are resistant to hijacking, that are resistant to predation. And the DeFi space right now, I think, is a great example of that.
Yes.
What's happening with NFTs, which is in its infancy, is a great example of that.
Yes.
I mean, the dinosaur financial systems, I have a brother here in Bali who's very deep in crypto, and he believes by 2035, all assets, or 95%, will be on blockchains. We're talking everything: real estate titles, deeds, corporate contracts, identity. Everything will be NFTs on blockchain ledgers of various kinds, and DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations. So we're looking at, this is the next kind of .com bubble of the tech sphere. Yeah. And the key is that, the people we don't want to have it have billions, and they're already they're already buying up land and digitally. And that's okay. The good thing about blockchain is that organized groups of individuals with good intentions can have a network effect.
Yes.
Unlike Wall Street. I mean, even then, Wall Street got hacked. Wall Street bets hacked Wall Street, right? They short squeezed these hedge funds. So, we're in the Wild West right now.
Total Wild West.
And it's exciting.
It is exciting. And frankly, this conversation has given me more hope and optimism. So, brother, thank you so much for spending the time today. I really appreciate it, man. Yeah,
this is great. There's some great thought tunnels that we went down that I don't normally go down. It's great.
Awesome. Yeah, beautiful. Okay, one last question before I let you go, and it's a heavy one. Not heavy, but what I want to ask you: if you took all of your experiences, all of your knowledge, all the wisdom gained, and you had to distill it down to one message or one sentence, what would it be?
Trust yourself and that all the resources, knowledge, information you could ever need is present in the present moment in space-time where you are, and just act.
Yes, brother. Love it. Dropping the wisdom. Kevin Orosz, thank you so much for your time today, brother.
Really grateful, Patrick. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
Man. Do you want to let people know where they can find you online?
Yeah, so it's my name, Kevin Orosz, OROSZ.com, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. You can check me out on Clubhouse and BitClout also, moving into those new network domains.
Nice.
And yeah, really excited to connect with any and all of the topic matter in this podcast. I do have I'll be seeing you hopefully in Costa Rica. I have a retreat at Imaloa Institute outside Dominical, Costa Rica, July 1st through 6th.
Nice.
So it's a 6-day mastermind leadership training all around a lot of what we've been talking about. Crypto masterclasses, brand building, business development, public speaking, and then lots of meditation, breathwork, and bioenergetics. So really stoked about that right now.
Epic, brother. Right on. Kevin, thank you so much again for your time. We'll see you real soon, man.
Thanks, brother.
All right. Peace.